Welcome to The Debrief, where we talk with the Washington Examiner's top journalists about the headlines they're covering this week and where the story's going next. I'm Sarah Westwood, and I'm here today with senior political correspondent David Drucker. And David, it's been about a month since the elections this year. Democrats still doing some soul searching about what went wrong, what they can do better heading into the midterms. How do you see their prospects heading into next year?
Well, Democrats have a lot of problems, and we've seen that in polling. And even though any one poll may stretch the Republican lead a little farther than it really is, may exaggerate, let's say, the Republican advantage, when you have polls in succession in groups all saying the same thing, the trend is clear, right? So Republicans were already going to be in a position to have a great midterm election because you have a Democrat in the White House, and historically, the party in power in the White House loses about 26, 27 seats in the House on average. There have been some exceptions. But what we've seen in polling with the president's average job approval now around 41, 42%, and the generic ballot showing Republicans gaining the lead overall, and some of these polls showing them with a 6-point, 7-point, 8-point lead or more in the generic ballot. Which party do you want in control of Congress? It just says that they have problems. Now, they can correct some of this. They can claw back some ground. Anything can happen. But if you're the Republicans, this is looking about as good as it ever has at this point in a midterm election cycle.
The conventional wisdom, at least espoused by Democrats, is that passing that massive spending package, the Build Back Better Act, is going to help their fortunes heading into the midterms. Do you think that's an accurate assumption?
Well, it can't hurt in this regard. I think if Democrats pass that bill and get it to the president's desk, they can at least show that they're governing. They can at least then go back to their districts and say, I got you this, I got you this, I got you that. It's going to help with this problem, and this problem. The bigger problem Democrats are having, and this is from the top down, Joe Biden, the president of the United States, on down to individual members of Congress, is that I don't think that they're doing enough to address problems that voters say they have. So I think there are a lot of voters that, if they look at that Build Back Better plan, would say, hey, help with child care would be great. Help with paid family leave would be great. Getting money to get my child into pre-K and other things in terms of education would be great. But right now, voters are worried about inflation. They're worried about the future of their economic well-being because of inflation. They have other things on their mind, including a coronavirus that just won't go away for good. Probably never will, not in our lifetime. But the point is, it's not enough to go to voters and say, I'm fixing this problem you have in general. You need to say, this is your most pressing problem. I understand that. I agree with you. Now here's my plan to fix that. And I think until Democrats do that, they're not going to give themselves the opportunity they need to try and not just change the narrative about what's happening in Washington and around the country, but to give voters to take a second look at them and say, oh, okay, like maybe they're finally getting it here.
And finally, December is going to be a very busy month on Capitol Hill. Lots of self-imposed deadlines after lawmakers return from the Thanksgiving recess. What can we expect to see?
God, really great question. Look, the debt ceiling still has to be raised. People, if they're not quite sure what that means, the federal government by law imposes a limit on the amount of money the U.S. government can borrow. And all we ever do is borrow money to pay our bills because we're constantly running debts and deficits. So if we get to December 15th and we haven't passed a new law to raise the amount of money that we can borrow, our debt ceiling, then we're going to start defaulting on our obligations. Secretary of the Treasury Janet Yellen has said the federal government can get to December 15th. So Congress has to figure this out and get something to the president's desk. Republicans have said, we're not going to help you out here. You guys run Congress. You figure it out. There are some signs that Democrats are starting to come around to this idea. But one of the reasons we had to do this short-term extension to get us from October to December was because Democrats refused to budge and Republicans refused to budge, and nobody seemed to understand how important this was. So they've got to figure out the debt ceiling. They've got to get government funding passed. The government can't pay any bill with any debt ceiling if it hasn't been authorized to do so by Congress. So they've got a deadline for that, or all the lights come off, and you can't go to any national park or museum. Other things get shut down. So they got to figure that out. And all the while, they're still trying to figure out their Build Back Better plan in terms of at least Democrats in Congress. So it's going to be a busy few weeks. There's a good chance it pushes up against Christmas Eve or New Year's Eve. Ultimately, I think that none of the worst scenarios will come to pass. But Congress always likes to walk right on the line before they actually get something done.
Well, David, thank you so much for being here today. You can get more reporting from David and the rest of the political team at WashingtonExaminer.com.